My name is Elena Blackwood, and this is the story of how I went from scrubbing my stepmother's marble floors to owning the empire that would destroy her world, one calculated move at a time. The platinum invitation trembled slightly in my perfectly manicured hands as I read it for the 100th time. The Aurora Foundation Annual Gala, honoring this year's philanthropist of the century. Tonight, my step-family would glide into this exclusive Manhattan ballroom expecting to network with society's most powerful elite. They had absolutely no idea they would be staring directly into the eyes of the woman who now controlled every aspect of their pathetic, crumbling lives. Ms. Blackwood? My personal assistant Marcus appeared silently beside me in the penthouse suite's marble-floored entryway, his expression professionally neutral, but his eyes twinkling with barely contained anticipation. Your step-family has just arrived downstairs in the lobby. Hotel security reports they're making quite the scene, demanding immediate access to what they're calling their niece's employer's suite. I smiled slowly, adjusting the diamond-encrusted straps of my custom Valentino gown that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Central Park stretched out below like an emerald carpet, and beyond that, the Manhattan skyline glittered like scattered diamonds against black velvet. This was my kingdom now. Perfect timing, Marcus. Send them up immediately. All of them. With pleasure, Ms. Blackwood. I was 15 when my father married Victoria Sterling, a woman whose smile could freeze champagne and whose ambition burned hotter than hellfire. Dad thought he was getting a loving stepmother for his grieving daughter and a caring wife for his lonely heart. Instead, he brought a viper into our home who would spend the next 3 years systematically destroying everything I held dear. Sophia. Victoria's voice could shatter crystal as it echoed through their sprawling Connecticut estate. The crystal in the dining room won't polish itself, and we have guests arriving in 2 hours. At 17, I was already functioning on 3 hours of sleep maximum, having spent the previous night scrubbing every inch of their imported Italian marble floors with a toothbrush because Victoria claimed the regular mop left unacceptable streaks. My hands were raw, my back ached constantly, and my grades were slipping because I barely had time for homework between my endless list of household duties. God, just look at her. My stepsister Cassandra sneered from her perch on the silk-upholstered chaise lounge, not bothering to glance up from her $1,000 manicure. Dad really hit the jackpot when he traded down from your mom to mine. At least Victoria has actual breeding and class. I gritted my teeth, focusing intently on arranging the fresh orchids Victoria demanded be replaced daily, each arrangement costing more than my monthly allowance had been before Dad died. Before everything changed. Before I became their personal servant. Now, Cassandra darling, Victoria purred without looking up from her leather-bound appointment book, every page filled with charity lunches and spa appointments funded by my father's life insurance money. Don't be unnecessarily cruel to poor Elena. She serves her purpose adequately. Some people in this world are simply born to lead, while others are destined to follow and serve. It's just the natural order of things. The worst part wasn't even the endless chores or the constant stream of calculated insults. It was watching them live in obscene luxury off my father's fortune while treating me like unpaid hired help. The inheritance that should have secured my future education and independence was being systematically drained by Cassandra's shopping sprees at Bergdorf Goodman and Victoria's monthly maintenance appointments that cost more than most people's rent. I got accepted to Harvard, I announced quietly, setting down the crystal pitcher of fresh squeezed orange juice I'd gotten up at 5 a.m. to prepare. Full scholarship. I'll be leaving in September. Victoria's laugh was sharp and cold as winter wind. Harvard? Oh, darling, you can barely manage to keep up with your basic high school classes while handling your responsibilities here. Besides, who would take care of maintaining this household? Dreams are lovely for children, but eventually someone has to face reality. Cassandra giggled maliciously. Maybe try community college instead. Something more appropriate for your skill level. If you save up enough tip money from serving at parties. That night, alone in the basement room they'd moved me to after Dad died, claiming the master bedroom suite was too large and inappropriate for someone my age, I made a decision that would change absolutely everything. Using Dad's old computer that they'd forgotten existed in their haste to redecorate, I began teaching myself everything: coding, web design, digital marketing, investment strategies, business development. While they slept peacefully in Egyptian cotton sheets above me, I built my empire line by line of code in the shadows. The private elevator chimed softly with its familiar crystal tone, and I heard Victoria's voice echoing down the marble-floored hallway, that same imperious, commanding tone that had ordered me to scrub toilets and serve their insufferable friends at dinner parties where they'd introduce me as our little helper. This is absolutely ridiculous. I demand to speak with whoever's in charge immediately. Do you people have any idea who we are? The Sterling family has connections throughout this entire city. Actually, ma'am, I'm afraid I don't know who you are, came the professionally polite but unmistakably firm response from hotel security. However, I do know exactly who requested to see you this evening. The hand-carved mahogany door to my penthouse suite swung open with barely a whisper, and Victoria swept into my domain wearing what she clearly considered her finest ensemble, a department store knockoff of a classic Chanel suit that probably cost her a month's worth of carefully managed finances, her artificially blonde hair styled in perfect waves. Diamond jewelry that I happened to know was cubic zirconia from her desperate attempts to maintain appearances. Behind her, Cassandra trailed like an expensive shadow in designer jeans that cost more than most people's monthly grocery budget and borrowed jewelry that glittered almost convincingly in the suite's ambient lighting. They stopped dead in their tracks when they saw me standing silhouetted against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Elena. Victoria's voice cracked with confusion and something that might have been the first stirrings of genuine fear. What in God's name are you doing here? And why are you dressed like I belong here? I turned slowly, gracefully, letting them absorb the full devastating picture. The custom-tailored Armani business suit that cost more than their car payments, the genuine Louboutin heels, the diamond tennis bracelet that had been featured in Vogue, the unmistakable aura of someone who owned everything she surveyed. Please, both of you, sit down and make yourselves comfortable. We have so very much to catch up on after all these years. Cassandra's eyes darted frantically around the opulent suite like a trapped animal, taking in the original Monet hanging casually beside the fireplace, the private bar stocked with bottles of wine worth more than luxury cars, the grand piano that had belonged to a deceased Russian oligarch, the view of Central Park that real estate agents called priceless. Jesus Christ, this place must cost like $50,000 a night. Are you working for someone incredibly rich now? Like their personal assistant or executive housekeeper or something? Something exactly like that, I replied smoothly, pouring myself a generous glass of Dom Perignon from the bottle chilling in its silver bucket. The champagne was older than Cassandra and infinitely more valuable. Victoria perched nervously on the very edge of the Italian leather sofa, clearly afraid to fully commit to sitting down. Well, you certainly look successful, dear. Very put together. I always knew you had potential, even during that difficult rebellious phase you went through. The lies rolled off her tongue like poison honey. That difficult rebellious phase, she referred to so dismissively, had been my desperate teenage years of servitude under her iron fist. Did you really? Because I distinctly remember you telling me I was destined for mediocrity and that some people are simply born to serve their betters. Now, Elena, you're twisting my words and taking things completely out of context. Am I really? I walked gracefully to the wall of windows, letting them marinate in their discomfort while I gazed out at my city. Tell me about your recent activities, your charity work. I understand you've been making quite the name for yourself in philanthropic circles. Victoria's confidence returned instantly, like a peacock spreading its feathers. Oh yes, the Sterling Foundation has been absolutely phenomenal. We raised over $3 million last year alone for underprivileged children's education programs. Several major corporations and high-net-worth individuals have taken serious notice of our work. Cassandra practically glowed with reflected glory. And my sustainable luxury fashion line is launching next month. We're partnering exclusively with Aurora Enterprises. They're like this absolutely massive international conglomerate that only works with the most exclusive, cutting-edge brands. It's incredibly selective. My pulse didn't quicken even slightly, though internally I was savoring every single word like fine wine. Aurora Enterprises? How remarkably impressive. The CEO is supposed to be this mysterious genius, Victoria continued, practically preening with self-satisfaction. Yell Blackwood. Nobody's ever actually seen her in person. She's incredibly private, but industry insiders say she's completely revolutionizing both philanthropy and sustainable business practices on a global scale. I'm desperately hoping to meet her tonight and network with other successful women at her level. I nearly choked on my champagne. They were literally praising me to my face, without the slightest recognition. Well, I said with practiced casualness, speaking of those partnerships. My phone buzzed insistently against the marble side table. The caller ID display clearly showed David Chun, Senior Legal Director, Aurora Enterprises. Please excuse me for just one moment. This is quite important. I answered with the tone of someone accustomed to commanding immediate attention. David, yes. I've reviewed the Sterling Foundation documentation. What's this about deliberately inflated donation figures? They claimed exclusive Aurora partnership status without any authorization whatsoever. I want a complete forensic audit initiated by tomorrow morning. And what about Cassandra Sterling's fashion contract? The preliminary agreement? Terminated immediately. Tonight. I ended the call and turned back to find them staring at me with expressions of growing horror and dawning comprehension. I apologize for the interruption. Now, where were we discussing your exciting new ventures? Elena, Victoria's voice was barely above a whisper. What exactly do you do for work? What's your position? Before I could craft a response, Marcus returned carrying his signature leather portfolio and wearing an apologetic but slightly amused expression. Ms. Blackwood, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt your evening, but our legal department requires your immediate signature on the Sterling Foundation investigation authorization. Additionally, Forbes has rescheduled your cover story interview for tomorrow morning, and the Wall Street Journal is requesting confirmation regarding your latest acquisition announcements. The tablet he handed me prominently displayed Yell Blackwood, founder and CEO, Aurora Enterprises, across the header in elegant gold lettering. Cassandra's crystal champagne flute slipped from her manicured fingers and exploded against the marble floor in a shower of glittering fragments. No, Victoria breathed, shaking her head in absolute denial. No, this is completely impossible. This has to be some kind of elaborate, sick joke. Marcus, I said with perfect calm, signing the legal documents with my platinum fountain pen, please arrange for security to escort the Sterling family from the premises. And do make sure to collect any Aurora Enterprises materials they might have in their possession. As Marcus departed with military efficiency, I finally turned to face them with my full attention. Surprise, dear family. This is absolutely insane, Cassandra stammered, her voice cracking with hysteria. This cannot be real. You're nobody. You were our goddamn maid. I was never your maid, Cassandra. I was a teenage girl whose father died far too young and foolishly trusted the wrong woman with his daughter's future. I moved with predatory grace to my mahogany desk and withdrew a thick leather portfolio. Would you like to know exactly what I've built while you were playing dress-up with money that rightfully belonged to me? I scattered dozens of photographs across the polished coffee table like tarot cards revealing destiny, magazine covers featuring my face on Forbes, Fortune, and Time, boardroom photographs with world leaders and tech titans, red carpet images from charity galas where I stood beside presidents and prime ministers. Aurora Enterprises isn't simply some company, Cassandra. It's a $22 billion empire. I own hospitals that save lives, universities that educate thousands, fashion houses that set global trends, technology companies that shape the future. I directly employ over 60,000 people across 7 continents and indirectly support the livelihoods of millions more. Victoria had turned completely pale, looking as though she might faint. But when did this happen? How could you possibly? Every single night while you slept peacefully in luxury purchased with my father's life insurance money, I worked until dawn. While you transformed me into your personal servant and entertainment, I taught myself advanced coding, complex business strategy, international investment theory, corporate law. That old computer in the basement that you forgot existed? I used it to create my first mobile application when I was 17 years old. Sold it for $200,000 before graduation. I retrieved my phone and opened my private banking application, casually displaying account balances that made Cassandra visibly stagger backward. Your little sustainable fashion line? Your precious charity foundation? I could purchase them both outright and dissolve them completely before the appetizers are served tonight. But honestly, they're not worth the minimal investment required. Elena, Victoria stood on shaking legs, her voice taking on a desperately pleading tone. I realize we may have had some difficulties and misunderstandings in the past, but we are family. Blood family. Surely you can understand that families sometimes have conflicts, but ultimately... Family? The word felt like acid on my tongue. Real families don't systematically steal inheritances from grieving children. Real families don't transform teenagers into unpaid domestic servants. Real families don't mock and belittle dreams while living parasitically off the dreamer's deceased father's money. I gestured coldly toward the legal documents scattered across my desk. You deliberately inflated your charity's donation numbers to secure preliminary Aurora partnership status, didn't you? Then used that false relationship to obtain loans and investments from other sources. Their guilty silence confirmed everything I had suspected. That constitutes securities fraud, wire fraud, and charity fraud. My legal team has been building an airtight case for the past 6 months. The door opened and Marcus returned with 4 uniformed security officers. Ms. Blackwood, there's also the urgent matter of the Elm Street property situation that requires your immediate attention. Yes. Thank you for reminding me. I looked directly into Victoria's terrified eyes. That beautiful house you've been living in so comfortably? The one with the imported marble floors I used to scrub with my bare hands? It legally belongs to the Blackwood Family Trust now, a trust which I control completely and absolutely. Victoria's face crumpled like cheap paper. Elena, you cannot possibly mean to. 30 days to vacate completely. The eviction papers will be professionally served tomorrow morning by my legal team. You can't do this to us, Victoria whispered, but her voice held no conviction whatsoever. I'm not doing anything vindictive or malicious to you. I'm simply choosing to stop enabling and financially supporting people who systematically destroyed my childhood and stole my inheritance. I walked slowly to the panoramic windows, gazing out at the city that had become my personal kingdom. You taught me that this world is sharply divided between the powerful and the powerless, between those who lead and those who serve. Thank you for that invaluable lesson. Cassandra began crying real tears for perhaps the first time in her privileged life. Not the calculated crocodile tears she'd used to manipulate our father, but genuine sobs of terror and desperation. Elena, please, I'm begging you. I'm truly sorry. We're both sorry. We didn't understand. We didn't know. You didn't understand because you never bothered to see me as fully human, I replied without turning around. But now you do. And now everyone else will too. As security began moving toward them, Victoria looked back with something that might have been genuine regret or might have been pure calculation. This isn't finished, Elena. This cannot be the end. You're absolutely correct. I agreed serenely. Tomorrow morning, every major newspaper in North America and Europe will publish my exclusive tell-all interview about overcoming childhood adversity and family cruelty to build a global business empire. The journalists were absolutely fascinated by the sections about rising above domestic servitude and systematic emotional abuse. The elevator doors sealed shut behind them with a soft whisper that somehow sounded like a coffin being closed forever. I poured myself fresh champagne from a new bottle and stepped onto my private terrace. Manhattan stretched endlessly below me like a glittering circuit board of dreams transformed into reality. In mere hours, my story would dominate international news cycles. The girl they had dismissed as worthless and destined for servitude was now officially one of the most powerful women on earth. I raised my crystal flute toward the infinite sparkling skyline. Thank you, I whispered to the night air and the memory of my father, for teaching me exactly who I was always meant to become. The champagne tasted like pure, perfect victory. Tomorrow I would wake up as Elena Blackwood, billionaire CEO, international philanthropist, and living proof that sometimes the very best revenge is simply becoming everything they swore you never could be. They had made me their maid. I had made myself their master. And this was only the beginning of their destruction.